Ambassador ZYX clicked her mandibles nervously as she stared at the communication panel. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with desperate whispers from dozens of species, their various forms of anxiety filling the air with pheromones, electromagnetic pulses, and subsonic vibrations. The Vorkani Armada will reach our outer colonies in 72 standard cycles, announced High Counselor Murthas, his crystalline body dimming with each word. Our combined fleets cannot match their numbers. They have conquered 17 systems in the past lunar cycle alone. The assembled representatives fell silent. The Vorkani were ruthless conquerors who absorbed entire civilizations, turning captured worlds into fortress factories for their ever-growing war machine. Their technology surpassed most council species by centuries, and their hunger for expansion seemed endless. ZYX's species, the Thraxians, had been among the first to detect the Vorkani threat. Her homeworld possessed the most advanced sensor networks in the galaxy, capable of tracking fleet movements across vast distances. But detection meant nothing without the power to act on that knowledge. "What about the humans?" asked Representative Quill, his feathered crest flattening against his skull. "They joined the council recently. Perhaps they could provide assistance." A collective sound rippled through the chamber, something between laughter and despair. Humans were the newest council members, barely 3 cycles into their membership. They controlled only one system and possessed primitive technology by galactic standards. Their ships moved slowly through space, relying on chemical propulsion and basic energy weapons. The humans? Counselor Varesh's tentacles writhed with what passed for amusement among his people. They barely qualify for spaceflight. Their largest vessel carries fewer than 3,000 beings. What could they possibly contribute against the Vorkani? ZYX had studied the human files during their council application process. They were a young species, having achieved faster-than-light travel only decades ago. Their world was classified as a death planet, harsh gravity, violent weather, and dangerous predators. Most council species considered it uninhabitable. The humans themselves seemed small and fragile compared to the mighty Karathi warriors or the intellectually superior Zalani. But something about the human application had intrigued her. Their psychological profiles showed unusual patterns. Where other species demonstrated fear when facing overwhelming odds, humans exhibited something different. The closest translation in Galactic Standard was stubborn determination, though that didn't capture the full meaning. "Perhaps we should consider all options," ZYX suggested carefully. "The humans may lack advanced technology, but they possess certain, unconventional approaches to problem solving." High Counselor Murthas's crystalline form flickered with confusion. "You suggest we request aid from a species that uses projectile weapons and combustion engines? Their military consists of individuals who fight on foot, for the sake of the void." The chamber erupted in what could charitably be called discussion, though it sounded more like the noise made by frightened prey animals. Representatives argued in 17 different languages, their translators struggling to keep pace with overlapping conversations about evacuation plans, surrender terms, and desperate last stands. ZYX accessed her personal files on human military history. The data painted a picture that seemed impossible by galactic standards. Humans regularly fought against superior numbers, often achieving victory through tactics that defied conventional military wisdom. They showed remarkable adaptability, turning disadvantages into advantages with creative thinking. More disturbing from a galactic perspective, humans seemed to thrive in situations that would break the spirit of other species. Their literature was filled with stories about individuals standing against impossible odds, refusing to surrender even when defeat seemed certain. Their concept of honor included dying for abstract principles rather than preserving oneself for the continuation of the species. "The motion to request human assistance has been suggested," High Counselor Murthas announced, cutting through the chaos. "Does anyone second this proposal?" Silence fell like a heavy blanket. Representative after representative avoided eye contact, their various forms of body language expressing doubt and embarrassment. Asking the humans for help seemed like an admission of complete desperation. ZYX's mandibles clicked once more as she made her decision. Her species valued thorough analysis above all else, and her analysis of human behavior patterns suggested possibilities that others were missing. "I second the proposal," she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation matrix. The shocked silence that followed felt like the moment before a star collapsed into a black hole. Then, the shouting began again, louder and more frantic than before. But it was too late. The proposal was on the floor, and council rules required a vote. 3 hours later, desperation won over pride by a margin of 7 votes. The distress signal would be sent to Earth, asking for whatever assistance the humans might provide. Most representatives expected a polite refusal or perhaps a small symbolic force that could be honorably mentioned in the surrender documents. None of them understood what they had just unleashed. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of the UES Defiance, reading the translated message for the 5th time. The other members of the Joint Chiefs surrounded the holographic display, their faces showing mixtures of surprise, confusion, and something that might have been excitement. "Let me understand this correctly," said General Martinez, his weathered face creasing with thought. "The entire Galactic Council is asking us for help against an invasion force that has conquered 17 star systems in the past month?" "That's the essence of it," Chen replied, gesturing to the display. "According to their data, this Vorkani Empire has technology that surpasses most council members by centuries. They're requesting any assistance we can provide." Admiral Petrov, commander of the European Federation's space forces, leaned forward. The translation software indicates they expect a small symbolic force. Their exact words were whatever assistance humanity might provide. General Nakamura from the Pacific Defense Coalition frowned. "Their intelligence reports describe our military as primitive and limited. They think we still fight exclusively with projectile weapons and chemical explosives." "Technically, we do," pointed out Dr. Sarah Okafor, the lead scientist from the African Space Consortium. "We also use directed energy weapons, kinetic bombardment systems, and fusion warheads, but I suppose those might seem primitive to species that manipulate gravity and bend spacetime." Chen studied the tactical data the Council had included with their request. The Vorkani possessed standard galactic military doctrine, massive ships with energy shields, plasma weapons, and boarding parties composed of warrior castes bred specifically for combat. Their fleets moved in predictable formations designed to overwhelm through superior firepower and numbers. "Standard galactic warfare appears to be remarkably civilized," observed Admiral Thompson from the Australian Defence Force. "Look at these engagement reports. Ships duel at extreme range, shields absorb damage until they fail, then vessels surrender rather than face destruction. Casualties are minimal, and conquered populations are absorbed intact into the conquering empire." "No orbital bombardment," noted General Kim from the Korean Aerospace Command. "No targeting of civilian populations. No biological or chemical weapons." Even their devastating conquest of 17 systems resulted in fewer total casualties than the Battle of Stalingrad. Chen nodded slowly, understanding beginning to form. "They fight wars like chess matches. Elegant, formal, with understood rules about acceptable behavior. The Vorkani are simply better at playing by those rules," added General Singh from the Indian Space Command. "Larger ships, more advanced weapons, superior numbers. In a conventional galactic engagement, they're unbeatable." Dr. Okafor pulled up Earth's military production data. "The Council's intelligence suggests they expect us to send perhaps one ship with a few thousand personnel. A gesture of solidarity before the inevitable surrender." The room fell silent as the implications became clear. The Galactic Council had asked for help from what they perceived as a primitive, barely spacefaring species. They wanted humans to provide a small token force to make the defeat more palatable politically. Admiral Chen looked around the room at the faces of Earth's military leadership. These were individuals who had grown up hearing stories about Thermopylae and Alamo, Stalingrad and Normandy. They represented a species that had turned warfare into an art form through necessity, developing tactics and strategies honed by millennia of conflict. "How many ships can we deploy?" she asked. General Martinez consulted his tablet. "Full mobilization? Every space-capable vessel from every Earth nation, corporate fleet, and colonial defense force?" "Everything," Chen confirmed. The numbers appeared on the main display. 1,200 major warships, including dreadnoughts, carriers, and heavy cruisers. 3,000 support vessels ranging from destroyers to specialized assault craft. 800,000 combat personnel, not counting the crews. "The logistics alone will be impressive," noted Admiral Petrov. "Moving that many ships across interstellar distances while maintaining operational readiness. The Council will certainly be surprised," General Nakamura observed with what might have been a smile. Their message mentioned expecting perhaps a single vessel with minimal crew. Dr. Okafor brought up comparative analysis charts. "Interesting cultural note. Human military doctrine emphasizes overwhelming force, rapid deployment, and decisive action. Galactic military doctrine appears to prioritize graduated response, formal engagement protocols, and minimal casualties. They play by rules, Admiral Thompson summarized. We play to win. Shen made her decision with the certainty that had carried her through 3 colonial wars and the Martian independence crisis. Send our response. Inform the Galactic Council that humanity will provide assistance. Full deployment, departure in 72 hours. Should we mention the scope of our response? Asked General Singh. Let it be a surprise, Shen replied. Signal the fleet commanders. Operation Helping Hand is now active. As the meeting dispersed and orders went out across Earth's communication networks, none of them fully grasped the shock they were about to deliver to the galaxy. The Galactic Council had politely asked for human assistance, expecting a symbolic gesture from a primitive species. Instead, they were about to receive the largest military deployment in human history, led by individuals who viewed warfare not as an elegant dance between civilized opponents, but as a problem to be solved through superior strategy, overwhelming force, and absolute determination to protect those who could not protect themselves. The humans were coming, and they had no intention of following galactic rules of engagement. Commander Vraktios of the Vorkani Imperial Navy studied the sensor readings with growing confusion. His flagship, the Eternal Conquest, commanded a fleet of 800 vessels approaching the Thraxian system. Intelligence reports indicated minimal resistance, perhaps 50 council ships defending 3 inhabited worlds. Commander, reported his sensor officer, a recently absorbed Kalani whose species specialized in long-range detection. Unusual readings near the system's edge. The signatures don't match any known council technology. Vraktios examined the data with practiced eyes. His species had conquered 93 star systems over the past century, absorbing their defenders into the Imperial Navy after demonstrating Vorkani superiority. It was a civilized process, formal challenges, ship-to-ship combat until shields failed, then, honorable surrender and integration. Energy signatures are inconsistent with standard galactic designs, the sensor officer continued. Power output suggests primitive fusion technology, but the numbers are unusual. Unusual how? Vraktios demanded, his crest flaring with impatience. There are approximately 1,500 vessels, Commander. The bridge fell silent. 1,500 ships represented the largest fleet deployment in recorded galactic history. Even the legendary Battle of 7 Stars had involved fewer than 400 vessels on both sides combined. Impossible, stated Navigation Officer Quenth. The entire Council Navy numbers fewer than 2,000 ships across 17 member species. They cannot have concentrated such a force without our intelligence networks detecting the movement. Vraktios accessed his tactical databases. Every Council species was catalogued with detailed information about their military capabilities. The Thraxians possessed excellent sensors but weak weapons. The Karathi had powerful warriors but slow ships. The Zilani built sophisticated technology but in limited quantities. Identify the ship configurations, he ordered. The main display showed vessel profiles that defied easy classification. The ships were smaller than typical Council designs, but there were so many of them. Their hull showed none of the elegant curves favored by galactic architects, instead featuring angular, brutally functional designs that seemed built for one purpose. Commander, the sensor officer's voice held a note of uncertainty that was unusual for his species. The fleet is arranging itself in formations I don't recognize. They're not following standard battle protocols. Vraktios watched as the unknown vessels formed into groups that made no sense according to conventional galactic warfare. Instead of the traditional line formation that allowed ships to duel honorably one against one, these vessels clustered in dense packs that would make precise targeting impossible. Attempt communication, he commanded. Demand identification and surrender terms according to galactic convention. The communication officer, a graceful Sylvani with natural telepathic abilities, worked her console with practiced efficiency. Channel open, Commander. Broadcasting standard challenge on all frequencies. The response came immediately, but, in a language the translation matrix struggled to process. Finally, words appeared on the display that made several bridge officers recoil in shock. This is Admiral Sarah Chen, Commanding Officer of Earth Defense Forces. You are ordered to cease all hostile actions against Galactic Council members and withdraw from this system immediately. The bridge erupted in confused chatter. Earth was barely mentioned in galactic databases, a primitive world on the galaxy's edge, home to a species that had achieved spaceflight only decades ago. Their membership in the Council was considered a charitable gesture rather than recognition of any real capability. Earth? Vractios's voice carried disbelief. The Death World species with chemical rockets and projectile weapons? They dare challenge the Imperial Navy? The sensor officer's readings updated continuously as the human fleet adjusted its positions. Commander, their formation is completely contrary to accepted military doctrine. They're arranging ships in overlapping fields of fire rather than maintaining proper dueling distances. Perhaps they don't understand civilized warfare, suggested Tactical Officer Renth. Their primitive nature might explain the unusual deployment patterns. Vractios opened a direct communication channel. Unknown human commander, I am Vractios of the Vorkani Imperial Navy. Your presence here violates standard engagement protocols. Withdraw your ships to minimum safe distance and we will discuss terms of your surrender after we conclude our business with the Council forces. The response came with disturbing speed. Negative, Vorkani forces. You will withdraw immediately or face the consequences. This is your final warning. The sheer audacity of the message stunned the bridge crew into silence. A primitive species was threatening the Imperial Navy, the most successful military force in galactic history. It was like watching an insect threaten a starcruiser. Commander, the sensor officer reported with growing alarm, the human vessels are moving into attack positions. Their weapons are powering up. Vractios studied the tactical display with professional interest. Human technology appeared crude by galactic standards, kinetic weapons, chemical explosives, and primitive energy systems. Their largest vessels were smaller than Vorkani escort craft. Signal the fleet, he ordered with what passed for amusement among his species. We will demonstrate proper galactic warfare to these primitives. Select 50 vessels for formal engagement. The remainder of the fleet will observe their education in civilized combat. As the Vorkani ships moved into traditional battle formation, spreading into an elegant line that would allow each vessel to engage individually according to galactic custom, the human fleet did something unprecedented. They accelerated directly toward the Vorkani formation at speeds that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Instead of the careful, measured approach that allowed for proper formal challenges, the human ships moved like a swarm of predators converging on prey. Commander, the tactical officer's voice held notes of confusion that bordered on panic. They're not following any recognized attack pattern. They're coming straight at us. For the first time in his distinguished military career, Commander Vractios felt something his species rarely experienced: uncertainty. The humans were not behaving like any civilized species should. They showed no respect for proper military protocol, no understanding of honorable combat, and no fear of forces that vastly outgunned them. As the first human ships entered weapons range and opened fire with salvos that defied every rule of galactic warfare, Vractios realized that the Imperial Navy was about to face something for which they had no training, no doctrine, and no preparation. They were about to fight humans. Ambassador ZYX watched the battle unfold from the Council observation ship positioned at the system's edge, her mandibles clicking rapidly with disbelief. The humans had been fighting for exactly 17 minutes, and everything she thought she knew about warfare was being systematically destroyed. Impossible, whispered Representative Quill, his feathered crest flat against his skull. The humans are targeting multiple ships simultaneously. That violates the fundamental principles of honorable combat. The main display showed carnage that defied galactic understanding. Human ships moved in coordinated groups, focusing overwhelming firepower on individual Vorkani vessels until their shields collapsed, then, immediately shifting to the next target. Instead of the elegant dueling that characterized civilized warfare, this resembled nothing so much as a pack hunt. Look at their ammunition expenditure, gasped Counselor Varesh, his tentacles writhing with agitation. They're firing continuously. Don't they understand the concept of measured engagement? ZYX had studied human military doctrine extensively during their council application, but reading about it and watching it in action were entirely different experiences. The humans weren't just ignoring galactic military convention, they seemed completely unaware that such conventions existed. Fraxian sensors are detecting massive energy spikes from the human vessels, reported the observation ship's captain. Power levels consistent with overloading their own systems. On the display, human ships pushed their reactors beyond safe operational parameters, trading longevity for immediate tactical advantage. Several vessels showed signs of severe system strain, but they continued fighting with apparent disregard for their own survival. "They're ramming," announced Representative Corral in stunned horror as a damaged human destroyer accelerated directly into a Vorkani cruiser. "They're actually ramming enemy ships." The collision vaporized both vessels in a burst of fusion fire, but the human ships nearby barely paused. They simply adjusted their formation and continued their relentless advance. To galactic eyes, it appeared to be mass suicide performed with military precision. High Counselor Murthas materialized on the observation deck through quantum translation, his crystalline form pulsing with rapid calculations. "Status report, Ambassador? The humans have destroyed or disabled 312 Vorkani vessels in 17 minutes, ZYX replied, her voice carrying disbelief at her own words. "Their losses number 47 ships. That's impossible. The Vorkani possess superior technology, larger vessels, and energy shielding that should provide overwhelming advantage. The humans aren't fighting like anyone else," Representative Quill observed, his translator struggling with concepts that had no galactic equivalents. "They use something called combined arms tactics and concentrated firepower doctrine." On the display, human fighters, impossibly small craft that carried only one or two beings, swarmed around Vorkani capital ships like angry insects. Instead of engaging in the traditional single combat that fighter doctrine required, they attacked in coordinated waves that overwhelmed point defenses through sheer numbers. "They sacrifice individual glory for group effectiveness," ZYX realized, finally, understanding what she was seeing. Each ship serves the overall strategy rather than seeking personal honor in combat. This concept was so alien to galactic thinking that several representatives required medical attention. The idea of subordinating individual achievement to collective success violated fundamental assumptions about civilized behavior. "Vorkani Commander Vraktos is signaling for formal parley," announced the communications officer. "He requests immediate ceasefire to discuss terms of engagement." The human response came with characteristic brevity: "Surrender unconditionally or be destroyed. You have 5 minutes to decide." The observation deck fell silent. In 15,000 years of recorded galactic history, no civilization had ever demanded unconditional surrender. Warfare was conducted through formal challenges, honorable defeat, and integration of conquered forces into the victor's military structure. The concept of total victory was literally incomprehensible. "Perhaps we should explain galactic conventions to the humans," suggested Counselor Varesh hesitantly. "They may not understand proper military protocol." Before anyone could respond, the tactical display updated with new information that sent shockwaves through every representative present. Long-range sensors had detected additional human forces approaching from multiple directions. "Reinforcements?" asked High Counselor Murthas. According to the sensor data, ZYX reported while frantically checking and rechecking her readings, there are approximately 3,000 additional human vessels approaching this system from 17 different vectors. The implications were staggering. Humanity had deployed nearly 5,000 ships, more than twice the entire combined naval strength of the Galactic Council. A species that most civilizations considered barely capable of interstellar travel had assembled the largest military fleet in recorded history. "Where did they get so many ships?" Representative Corral demanded. "Our intelligence indicated humans possessed fewer than 100 space-capable vessels. They appear to have mobilized every craft capable of interstellar travel," ZYX replied, studying the sensor profiles. "Military vessels, cargo ships, exploration craft, even what appear to be civilian transports modified with weapons systems." The scope of human mobilization was unprecedented. They had transformed their entire civilization into a war machine in response to a request for assistance. No galactic species had ever demonstrated such capability or commitment. "The Vorkani fleet is requesting immediate withdrawal permissions," announced the communications officer. Commander Vraktos reports that his forces are facing unprecedented tactical challenges and requires strategic reassessment. For the first time in Imperial Navy history, a Vorkani force was retreating. Not conducting a strategic withdrawal or regrouping for renewed assault, but actually fleeing from a battlefield. The psychological impact on galactic civilization would be immeasurable. "Signal the humans," High Counselor Murthas ordered. "Express our gratitude for their assistance and inform them that the threat has been neutralized." The response came immediately: negative, Council forces. Mission parameters require complete elimination of hostile threats to Council member species. We are pursuing retreating enemy forces to ensure they cannot regroup for another assault. ZYX's mandibles clicked with sudden understanding. The humans weren't fighting to win a single battle. They were fighting to end the war permanently. They intended to pursue the Vorkani fleet across the galaxy until the Empire's ability to threaten anyone was completely destroyed. As the massive human armada adjusted course to follow the retreating Vorkani forces, one thought dominated every mind on the observation deck. They had asked for help from a species they considered primitive, and, instead they had unleashed something that would fundamentally change the nature of galactic civilization forever. 6 months after the Battle of Thraxion Prime, Ambassador ZYX stood in the newly constructed council chambers, watching representatives from 43 species discuss the complete reorganization of galactic civilization. The humans had done exactly what they promised. They had eliminated the Vorkani threat permanently. The former Vorkani Empire encompassed 112 star systems, reported Admiral Chen, her crisp military bearing unchanged despite her new diplomatic responsibilities. Our forces have completed liberation operations in all contested territories. Former Imperial subjects have been offered council membership and protection. The numbers were staggering. In 6 months, humanity had dismantled an empire that had taken 3 centuries to build. They hadn't simply defeated the Vorkani fleet, they had systematically freed every conquered world, established local governments, and set up defense networks to prevent future imperial expansion. The efficiency of human military operations exceeded all projections, observed High Counselor Murthas, his crystalline form pulsing with rapid calculations. Your forces completed operations that our models predicted would require decades of conventional warfare. Admiral Chen nodded matter-of-factly. Human doctrine emphasizes decisive action and overwhelming force. We designed the campaign to achieve total victory through superior logistics, coordinated strategy, and sustained pressure across multiple operational theaters. These words required translation into 17 languages because no galactic civilization had concepts equivalent to total victory or sustained pressure. The idea of fighting until your enemy was completely incapable of continued resistance violated every principle of civilized warfare. Representative Corral, newly appointed ambassador from the liberated Karathi systems, raised a tentacle nervously. The human approach to post-conflict reconstruction is equally unprecedented. They established democratic governments on every liberated world and, then, withdrew their forces. This was perhaps more shocking than their military efficiency. Throughout galactic history, conquerors absorbed defeated territories into their own empires. The humans had done the opposite, they had freed conquered worlds and, then, refused to govern them. Humanity seeks no territorial expansion, Admiral Chen explained when questioned about this bizarre behavior. Our mission was to eliminate a threat to council members, not to establish an empire. Earth Defense Forces will maintain treaty obligations to protect liberated systems, but we respect their right to self-governance. ZYX studied the humans with growing fascination. They had revolutionized galactic warfare, restructured interstellar politics, and established new standards for military ethics. Yet they seemed genuinely puzzled by the attention their actions had generated. Perhaps Admiral Chen could explain human motivations, ZYX suggested carefully. The galactic community remains uncertain why humanity committed such massive resources to assist species they had known for only 3 cycles. Admiral Chen exchanged glances with her staff before responding. The Galactic Council requested assistance. Council members were facing extinction from an aggressive imperial power. Providing aid was simply the right thing to do. The phrase "the right thing to do" required extensive philosophical debate among council translators. Most galactic species acted based on resource calculations, territorial advantages, or species survival. The concept of moral obligation to strangers was virtually unknown. But, the resource expenditure, pressed Representative Varesh, his tentacles writhing with confusion. Humanity mobilized your entire military capability for beings you barely knew. The logical approach would have been to provide minimal assistance while preserving your own strength. Logic has its place, Admiral Chen replied with something that might have been amusement. But, humanity has learned that sometimes you have to do what's right regardless of personal cost. We couldn't stand by while innocent civilizations faced destruction. The implications were staggering. Humans had developed a philosophical framework that prioritized moral principles over practical considerations. They would commit their entire civilization to protecting strangers based on abstract concepts of justice and righteousness. The human military restructuring proposal merits serious consideration, announced High Counselor Murthas. They offered to train Council forces in advanced tactical doctrine while maintaining defensive commitments to all member species. This represented another impossible concept. Humans were offering to share their military advantages with potential rivals, creating a stronger collective defense rather than maintaining superiority through secrecy. Human training programs have already produced remarkable results, reported General Singh, recently appointed as Earth's military liaison to the Council. Phraxian forces equipped with human-designed small craft have achieved 40% improvement in tactical response times. Karathi ground troops using human infantry doctrine have reduced casualty rates by 60%. The transformation was visible throughout Council space. Species that had never considered themselves warriors were developing military capabilities that rivaled traditional martial cultures. The humans had not only defeated the greatest threat in galactic history, they were systematically strengthening everyone else to prevent future threats. Questions arise regarding humanity's long-term intentions, observed Representative Quill carefully. Your species has demonstrated military capability that exceeds all other Council members combined. What guarantees exist regarding future human policy? Admiral Chen's expression grew serious, and, when she spoke, her words carried the weight of absolute conviction. Humanity's commitment to Council principles remains absolute. We will never use military force for territorial expansion, resource acquisition, or political coercion. Earth defense forces exist to protect those who cannot protect themselves. ZYX realized that this was not a political statement designed to reassure potential allies. The humans genuinely believed these principles with the same intensity other species reserved for species' survival instincts. The Council session concluded with unanimous approval of humanity's proposal for galactic defense restructuring. But, as representatives dispersed to their respective systems, one fact dominated every conversation. The Galactic Council had mistakenly asked humanity for assistance, expecting a symbolic gesture from a primitive species. Instead, they had discovered that humans were perhaps the most dangerous military force in galactic history, dangerous not because they sought conquest, but because they would fight anyone and everyone who threatened the innocent. The galaxy would never be the same. Pirates who had operated with impunity for centuries now faced human patrol fleets that showed no mercy to those who preyed on the weak. Aggressive empires reconsidered expansion plans when faced with species backed by human defense commitments. Peaceful civilizations flourished under protection provided by beings who asked nothing in return except the opportunity to do what they considered right. Humanity had answered a call for help, and, in doing so, they had accidentally become the guardians of galactic civilization.